This is Bob Capetta from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and this is Math 121, Quiz Week 15 Solutions, Part 2. So the question is log base 3 of x plus 2 plus log base 3 of x minus 6 equals 2. So the sum of the logs is the log of the product. This is log base 3 x plus 2 times x minus 6. And then we realize that's 3 to the second power. 3 to the second power equals x plus 2 times x minus 6. So 9 is, multiplying this out, x squared minus 6x plus 2x minus 12. Negative 6x plus 2x minus 4x. Then subtracting 9 from both sides, we get 0 is x squared minus 4x minus 21, which we need to factor. That will be 0 is x minus 7 times x plus 3. Setting each of those equal to 0, x minus 7 is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. So we get x is 7 or x is negative 3, except we have to remember that you cannot take a logarithm of a negative number. If I plug in 7, 7 plus 2 is 9, that's okay. 7 minus 6 is 1, that's okay. But if I plug in negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. That is not in the domain. Negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9, also not in the domain. So negative 3 is not really a solution. It's not allowable. Logarithms are only defined for positive numbers, not acceptable at 0, not acceptable at negative numbers. So the solution to this question is 7. Next we have this triangle. So we have 55 degrees and 30 degrees on the bottom. And we certainly could find the third angle because the three angles have to sum to 180. So that's 95 degrees. But our question here is to find A. We want to find the length of this side of the triangle. So A over sine 55 would be 8 over sine 30. So then A times sine 30 is 8 times sine 55. But what is sine 30? Sine 30 is just a half. So we get A times a half is 8 times sine of 55 degrees. Multiply both sides by 2, and we're going to get A is 16 times sine 55 degrees. That is the exact answer for that question. And the last question on our quiz is cos squared x plus 3 sine squared x minus sine x equals 2. We want a general solution for this. Well, we have to only focus on one trig function. So you'll notice sine squared is here and sine is here. So let's rewrite cos squared as 1 minus sine squared. So we have 1 minus sine squared plus 3 sine squared minus sine equals 2. 3 sine squared minus 1 sine squared will give us 2 sine squared minus sine x with a 1 equals 2. So let's go ahead and rewrite it this way, and then subtracting 2 from both sides, we get 2 sine squared x minus 1 is 0. And then we have the relatively challenging task of factoring that. And what that becomes is 2 sine x plus 1 times sine x minus 1. Notice 2 sine x times sine x is 2 sine squared x. 2 sine x times negative 1 is negative 2 sine x. 1 times sine x is positive 1 sine x. Add those together, negative sine x. 1 times negative 1 is 0. So this equals 0 or this equals 0. 2 sine x plus 1 is 0 or sine x minus 1 is 0. Well, 2 sine x plus 1 is 0 or sine x minus 1 is 0 indeed. So that would give me 2 sine x is negative 1 or sine x is 1. Sine x is negative 1/2 or sine x is 1. Now when is sine negative 1/2? Got to think about that. The reference angle is pi over 6, but sine is negative in quadrants 3 and 4. So we'll keep that in mind. And when is sine x equal to 1? That, of course, is when x equals pi over 2. So the reference angle for the first part is pi over 6. And if I'm in quadrant 3, sine is negative in quadrant 3, that'd be pi plus pi over 6. In quadrant 4, that would be 2 pi minus pi over 6. Pi plus pi over 6 is 7 pi over 6. 2 pi minus pi over 6 is 11 pi over 6. Now if sine x equals 1, of course, my answer is going to be pi over 2. So I have 3 solutions in the range from 0 to 2 pi, but I need a general solution. So we need to add 2 pi k to all of these. So we're going to say that, but of course we've got to recognize that k is an integer. So our final answer looks like that. And that will conclude this lesson.